John McClain, who's been with the Houston Chronicles since the 70s, since 1976 to this very day. He's been 43 years at it. Love when he chats on the show. Good to chat with you, John. What's going on in your world?
Rich, all kind of things. Great time coming up with the NFL. I'm headed to Astros spring training as a fan for 3 days this weekend to watch them play. I want to see them play on the road because I'm curious about how they're being treated in spring training games compared to when regular season starts, and their first road trip is at Oakland. You guys were talking about Brady. If indeed he went to Bruce Arians, Arians would have to change his entire offense. He sends out everybody, doesn't keep tight ends, running backs in the block.
Right.
He's got a mediocre offensive line. To me, the Raiders, if he's going to leave there, the Raiders would be ideal, assuming Phillip Rivers goes to Indianapolis to be reunited with Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni. But the Raiders have everything but a really good wide receiver, and with their first pick in the first round, they would have their choice, maybe of all three, possibly with the top two, after somebody like Arizona took CeeDee Lamb.
There's no question that the Raiders are set up with 2 first-rounders. Again, they're ready to cashier in the last from the Bears for Khalil Mack. And they had Mayock pulling the trigger on it last year, and he found a ton of young players that did so well from obviously Jacobs in the first round. Abram would have been had he been healthy. Max Crosby later in the draft. Hunter Renfrow as well. Farrell at the very top. So there is all of that there for Tom. Why not New England? Though, John, from based on what you're hearing?
Could be money, could be a commitment of more than 1 year, could be that he's concerned about the talent. He could lose 2 offensive linemen in free agency. You know, they've tried to bring in receivers, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown. They backfired. Kill Harry's going into his second year. Who knows how he'll turn out, really. Haven't replaced the Gronk. He doesn't have the kind of talent on that offense that he could get from a team like the Raiders, if indeed the Raiders were interested in Brady. And, of course, that would mean they trade Derek Carr. But everybody's talking about Tennessee. I know Tennessee wants to re-sign Ryan Tannehill. And if indeed he doesn't, if he prices himself out of their market, then they can go ahead and play Brady and hope he can come in there and have a chance to win a championship over the next 2 years.
You put any credence in the 49ers as a possible landing spot, John?
Rich, let me ask you this. Jimmy Garoppolo misses 2018 with a torn ACL. He comes back. He helps them go to the Super Bowl. People say, well, I've read this and heard this, Rich. Boy, Brady would have made those plays at the end to beat the Chiefs. Brady didn't make plays at the end to beat the Titans at home. So I'm sure Tom Brady would be great for them for a couple of years, but they're committed to Garoppolo. I'd be stunned if Kyle Shanahan pulled off the deal where he signed Brady and maybe they trade Garoppolo back to New England.
So handicap it for me. 1 week from tomorrow, new league year opens up. Where do you think Brady goes?
I'm going to say I'm handicapping. He goes back to New England 1, Raiders 2nd, Titans 3rd.
What about the Chargers? You don't think they're in the mix?
Their offensive line is awful. The last place he needs to go is some team that has an offensive line that needs to be totally redone.
What about the idea you don't want to go in Mahomes' division right now? What about that idea?
I can't imagine Tom Brady would care about that. He's the greatest of all time. He'd probably like a chance to show Mahomes it's kind of like the old gunslinger. Wants one last rodeo, show him who's boss. But I think the problem with the Chargers, other than the fact people don't care about them in L.A., is their offensive line. Brady has got to have a good offensive line. That's imperative.
Your ear to the ground on the collective bargaining agreement. You've been through many of these rodeos. John, how do you see this playing out now that we've got 2 extra days for the vote to take place? The NFL Players Association selecting a new president today. I mean, you want to talk about so many moving parts. Franchise tag window has just been moved. The deadline to noon on Monday, which is when the tampering window opens up with a new league year coming. Oh, my gosh. It's a big conversation with this collective bargaining agreement. So much about what happens next week hinges on this vote. What are you hearing?
Rich, I've been through multiple strikes. That's not good for anybody. The owners always win. The owners run football, as you know. The union runs baseball and basketball, and it's not going to change because there's so many players. And when you have 60% making $1 million or less, they're the ones that are going to benefit the most right off the bat. I think it will pass. If not, they'll have another year. Could change a lot of things about how much money is spent because the players won't get as big a cut, the rosters won't be increased, the practice squads won't be increased. But I'll say this. I think that whoever is the next union president, when he takes over and he got a 10-year agreement, that's the kind of job you and I wish we had.
Right. Well, J.C. Treader was just announced as the new Players Association president.
Good for him.
Right. Is there any
I
handicapping?
thought Eric Winston did a terrific job, Reg. He was, under difficult circumstances, and I don't know what's next for Eric. He could go into TV, he could go into radio, politics, work for the league, work for the union, but I think Eric's done a tremendous job.
Okay. John McClain here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is the deal with Verlander? He's already said he doesn't think he's going to be ready for opening day. What's the scoop on that front?
He's had 2 injuries, and he's been healthy since he had a serious groin injury with the Tigers in 2015. And that the Astros' Achilles heel is their pitching staff, not just losing Garrett Cole, but Lance McCullers coming off Tommy John surgery. He'll be limited. They don't have anybody to step up after that. Now, if you have Verlander, say, after the first month of the season, cost him 3 or 4 starts, Zach Greinke's got to step up. He's old, too. And their undoing could be the pitching staff. But Rich, the last thing you can do with a 37-year-old starting pitcher is bring him back too soon. So I expect they will wait until he's 110%, so we may not see him till May.
Yeah, that's what that sounds like to me, too. When you're talking about cold weather where you might go, I mean, you mentioned the first road trip is in the Bay Area, in Oakland. I mean, what the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco, right? Could you imagine what it is in April?
That's what WC Phil said.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's the whole. Why not just sit somebody till then? The concept that I hear from so many fans, John, is that the cheating scandal won't go away anytime soon, and you wanted to know what their reaction is going to be on the road. It's going to be quite something when their first road trip is in Oakland and also here in Southern California with the Angels fans, no doubt ready to hoot and holler. That so many fans are saying that this cheating scandal won't go away because the Astros have not been sufficiently remorseful. I place that in the hands of somebody who's been there since day one watching this whole thing unfold.
I see people like A-Rod saying that, and I'm saying, what planet have you been on? Their first spring training day, they had that awful news conference with owner Jim Crane. It was terrible. But after that, they let the media come into the locker room, and player after player stepped up and said, yes, we did, we're sorry. And then they told them after that, you're not talking about it anymore. And so I don't know what else people want unless it's blood, but yes, it's not going away. I'm going up to the Rangers' new ballpark and watch them there because that's their biggest rival. And there'll be a lot of Astros fans there, too. So I expect if fans I'm sorry they don't go to New York play the Yankees till late in the season.
September, I know, yeah.
I'm sorry they're not playing at the Dodgers, but the All-Star game is in Dodger Stadium. Can you imagine the greeting the Astros will get? So the fans are the ones, and the media, of course, that won't let it die for at least a season.
Well, I mean, we're still waiting on what the Red Sox may or may not have done the year after, and then just the question is, you see enough online, John, with the trash can banging and the whistling and the hand clapping potentially about what did happen in the postseason. That's just going to be another thing that's lingering out there at some point. What did happen? And against whom specifically, for us to try and determine just how valuable this plan was that they had with the trash can banging and the sign stealing?
I'll say this, Reg. People believe Manfred's investigation that they cheated in 2017, but they don't believe his investigation that they did not in 2019 when they lost 4 World Series games at home, including the 7th one. And people are going to believe what they're going to believe. I can't wait to see how the Astros handle it mentally. they need to have a psychiatrist sitting on the bench, I believe. So after every at bat, they can go in there and get some guidance. But, it's going to be something that we've never seen, unprecedented, and that's why it's going to be so exciting and interesting.
And I mean, they used to have a psychologist or psychiatrist or somebody who knew that, and A.J. Hinch sitting there on the bench. I mean, that's part of his, his education coming into being a manager. How is Dusty handling all this so far?
Dusty Baker, as you can imagine, Rich, he's been tremendous. He's just what they needed. Steady hand on the rudder, and he doesn't dodge anything. He confronts everything head on. I think hiring Dusty Baker will be their best free agent move of the offseason. I hope he does well enough to have that second-year option picked up.
A couple more minutes left with John McClain. Been with the Houston Chronicle since 1976. Finger on the pulse of Houston sports. Are the Rockets having second thoughts on trading Capella and going on, I guess, this 6, 7, and under plan so far?
Rich, I was hoping I could get away where you wouldn't bring up the Rockets,
right,
where everything's even more negative. Lost 4 in a row. They went to Boston. They had a great game to beat the Celtics, and then they've just fallen flat. They're getting blown out. It looked like they quit in their last game against Orlando, and people here are baffled. They're angry. The small ball that was working so well is not working, and Mike D'Antoni's kind of at the end of his rope. James Harden's not playing well, and Russell Westbrook is. So they got too much talent not to get it together, but truthfully, once they get in the playoffs, I don't see this style working much past maybe the first round right now. They look like if they keep playing like this, they won't even get in the playoffs.
Were you surprised that Bill O'Brien gave up the play calling a couple weeks ago?
Stunned. It was the last question I asked him in a little private get-to before he went in to do his news conference with the masses. And I said, by the way, Bill, have you given any more regard to having offensive coordinator Tim Kelly call the plays? And he hesitated and said, Timmy's calling the plays. And that was big news in Houston because so many fans and media wanted him to do it. Now he'll be able to focus on the game more. He's given it up one time to former offensive coordinator George Godsey in 2015, but every other year in his 6 years with the Texans, he's called the plays.
Well, you're one of the many members of the media that I've seen at owners' meetings in the past. Do you think this one's going to go down in a couple weeks?
I do. It's interesting because they say the elderly is the most susceptible to getting the coronavirus. Well, most of the owners are elderly. I'm elderly, and so I'm going. I think they'll pull it off. Maybe they'll make it stand 6 feet from them, like they're talking about in baseball, basketball, and soccer and hockey. But it's unprecedented times for us, Rich. We got to roll with the punches. We can't worry about each of us individually. We got to worry about what's good for the masses, and I don't mind the inconvenience at all.
What about the idea of not letting members of the media in the locker room? You've obviously been in locker rooms for over 40 years. Do you think that this is going to stay put from now on and be used as, if you will, an excuse or a cudgel to keep media out of the locker room? John, or what? What do you think?
I think they'll do it now, and it'd be hard to complain about it if they think it's better. But on the other hand, you can't let any sponsors come in there. You can't let any fans come in there. And so if it's just a player sanctuary, keep everybody out, including the media. Hey, we got to roll with those punches, Rich.
John, thanks for the time. Always love our chats. You be well, okay?
Rich, you too. Thank you very much as always.
Right back at you. That's John McClain.